Welcome to our temperature blanket for 2017. We have got our new color scheme up. We adjusted it slightly yesterday because we are in love with all these colors. So I'm using a size 6mm hook, and I have my yarn ready to go. And my temperature today, we're using AccuWeather. Can you see that? Because it gives your suburb, not just your town, but it gives your suburb. So that's an app you can download on Android or Apple, and that's the one some of us are using. And the temperature today is 26 degrees as our high. So 26 degrees is this sunny yellow. So we are going to also chain. Well, the other thing about the blanket is they turn out to be quite long and quite heavy. So each month is about 8 inches of blanket, which means 12 months is going to be 8 feet long, which is pretty long. So unless you're making an actual full-size blanket, like for a queen-size bed or something like that, where it's actually going over all sides of your mattress and up to the pillows and down on the foot of your bed, 8 feet is going to be pretty long. So our options of what I think we're going to do, I don't know when we're going to do it, if we're going to do it the first half of the year or the second half of the year or the whole way through, is skip 1 day a week. So we're thinking of skipping Sundays, or any day that's that you can remember, so that your blanket would then be about 7 feet or 6.5 feet, which would be a better size if you're doing it like for like a kid's bed or something smaller. So that's food for thought. It's going to be 8 feet long if you use a 6mm hook, and if you use a 5mm hook, it's going to be 7.5 feet long. So that's still long. So keep that scale in your head as you're planning your blanket. And you can also check your chains on the chart from Crochet Crowd, as we went over before. So figure out your chains. I'm going to make mine about 5 feet wide, I think, 4.5 feet, 5 feet. So it'll still be in proportion when it's finished. I have all my yarns caked up and ready to go, and I'm keeping them in a cute little basket, like a storage bin, so I can just take it with me, and I have all the colors I'll be using for this season in my basket. If you're doing moss stitch, which is another option you could do, this is moss stitch. You're going to want your starter chain to be multiples of 2, but I think we're just going to be doing single crochet the whole way through, because I kind of like how it's solid and really like lines going across. So that's this year. Maybe next year we'll do moss stitch. But if you're doing moss stitch or linen stitch, which is the same thing, do your chain with multiples of 2. You're going to make your slip knot, and you're going to make your starter chain, your foundation chain, with a slightly larger hook than you'll be using. I'm going to be making my blanket with the 6mm, so for my chain I'm going to use a 6.5. Just so that my chains are looser, because my starter chains are usually, or my foundation chains are usually tighter. But that's your personal preference, whatever you want to do, but I'm doing it with a larger hook. And if you're doing the moss stitch, then also do multiples of 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So there is my foundation chain. I'm going to change hooks back to my 6mm. And so on your first day today, you're going to do your chain and your first row of single crochet with the same yarn. So go into the second chain from the hook. How I suggest doing it, because I don't want to put a border on my blanket, is go into the bumps on the back. So turn your chain over, so there's your V's, but turn your work over so that the V's are facing down on your hand and the bumps are facing up. And you can see these little bumps here on the back ridges they're called. We call them camel bumps just for fun. We're going to be making 1 single crochet into each camel bump. And that gives you a really nice finished edge on your blanket. It ends up looking the same as where you finish, so it's going to have the nice V-stitch along the edge. And then if you don't want to make a border, your blanket will look finished So it's a bit of a pain in the butt, it's a bit fiddly, but it's worth it. It's just today. So a little bit of effort is required. So 1 single crochet into each camel bump, and I'll meet you at the end of this row. So here we're at the end. This is the last camel bump here. So we'll do our single crochet into there. So this is my temperature for today. Mine's just going to be a bit bigger, obviously, but you can see how both of these edges are matching. Like the edge that our foundation chain now looks like our finished edge at the top. So that's why we went into the camel bumps. And it's up to you if that's something you want to do. I think it's worth it. So that's my personal preference, but you can do what you'd like to do. Now, you're going to leave your work like this until tomorrow. You're going to leave your, you can make your loop bigger, obviously, but you're going to leave your yarn attached, and just in case the temperature is the same tomorrow, you're just going to do your chain 1 and come all the way back without having to attach your yarn again if it's the same color. So at the end of the day, leave your yarn attached in case the temperature is the same. For our purposes, we'll be doing a color change and working on our ends. So tomorrow it says my temperature is 27, and 27 goes up to this mango color. So I am going to cut my yarn and how we're going to finish our ends, or at the ends of the row. When you cut your yarn, you'll chain 1 and pull the tail through, and then just pull it down so it's snug. Not super hard. You don't want to like shrink your work, but you want to do that chain 1 to make a little bit of a knot so that your ends are secure. Then you're going to take your crochet hook. Actually, I'm going to make my tail a bit shorter. It's a bit long. You're going to take your crochet hook and just weave this tail in underneath that V-stitch. You're going to go back around 6 stitches, just weaving it in back and forth. Then when we go over making our next row, we don't have to weave in our ends. I'm still going to weave it back slightly, but I'll show you how to do that. And then you don't really have to use a needle, which with all these ends feels a lot better, motivationally speaking. So I wove it in back a little bit, 5 stitches or so, and I'm just going to let it hang there for now. I am going to turn my work, get ready to come back, and get my mango ready. So now to attach your next color, you're going to make a slip knot and put that on your hook. So this one is also going to be secure because you've put your slip knot. So each row we're doing so there's no risk of it coming out. So into this first stitch, you're just going to attach your new yarn with a slip knot. I leave my tail down along my work. You're going to chain 1 and you're going to make a single crochet into each stitch going back. Going over your tail. And we've gone over our yellow tail quite a bit, or light yellow, and we are going over our orange. I'm going to drop one sooner than the other. I don't want them both at the back of my work on the same stitch, just for the bulk. So I'll drop this one next, so they're coming back at different spots just by a smudge. And going into 111, and we'll finish our stitch. We'll cut our yarn, leaving about a 5-inch tail, I suppose. Do a chain 1 to pull your tail through, so that's secure. And then on this side, now we can cut off this yellow thread, but what I'm going to do, because I'm paranoid, it's not that it's going to come out, but when you stretch it, your tail can wiggle through, and I really don't like that. So I'm going to just quickly grab something that's yellow, the same shade, and just go back a little bit, and then cut this off. Now even if you stretch it, the tail won't be popping out. So that's good. And then this one I'm going to do on my next round. So let's weave this tail in back underneath our V's a little bit. I weave these back and forth enough so that they don't all stop at the same spot, because I don't want it to be like an obvious difference. So some I do more than others, but that's your own preference also. So I've gone back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches, 5 stitches. That's fine now for that one. And I'm going to get my new color, which I will check here. So 28. So that is the pumpkin. So I'll grab pumpkin and make a slip knot. Put it on my hook. Turn my work and attach my yarn to the first stitch. Slip stitch to join, so that's secure. Chain 1 and single crochet. Now this tail from our last one, I'm just going to bring it over on the top of my stitches and just catch it in my single crochet, and then when I get past it I can actually cut that off without using a needle. So I'm just working over it, which I have now. So I'll pull it a little bit to make sure it's not you know, bulked up in there, and then that one just gets cut off. Okay, now keep going single crochets till you get to your next tail. If you don't want to do your ends in, you can do tassels. Lots of people do tassels, and then you can even do tassels on all 4 sides if you want to. Now this tail here, I'm going to bring it up on top of my work again, and I'm going to go over that with my single crochet. So if you work on your ends like this, there's no weaving in your ends. So this one I've done. I'm just going to pull it and make sure it's not bulky and cut it off. And then keep going with my single crochet. So you're going to be working your entire temperature blanket like this. Make sure you get your last stitch. You don't want to be losing stitches on the side. You can always count your stitches to make sure you still have 20, and you can also just eyeball it that, you know, it's pretty much going straight. So then again, you'll cut your yarn, bring your tail through, weave it back, and you'll be doing your 1 row a day or 6 days a week or however you want to do it. Now you're going to leave this tail so you can go over it. And this tail also we can weave in now. I should have put it underneath, I think, but I don't think I did. So it's not too late to weave it in. We can always catch it on our next round. And this is a great way to deal with your ends, especially on a blanket where you'll have so many ends to do. You're welcome, of course, to use a needle, a darning needle, if you'd like. Pull that back out. So that we'll do one more row, and then you'll have it all down. You probably have it down already, but we'll just make sure. So next color, slip knot to join. We turn our work, go into the first space, slip knot to join, chain 1, go over your tail this way for this round, and go into the space between your stitches. If you're weaving in your ends the same way I'm doing underneath your V's, it's a good idea to go in between the stitches for your single crochet, just because you're guaranteed to catch the end that you wove in back and forth. If you don't, see here I went under the V's, and you can see a little bit. See this one here? It looks like I didn't really weave it in perfectly. So if you're super fussy about that, like if that bothers you, go in between the spaces up for your single crochets, and that catches that yarn for sure, so nobody can see it. That's your personal preference, whatever you like to do. I'll drop the green tail now. Oh, I won't drop the green tail now, because the orange tail is there, so I don't want them in the same spot. I'll go 2 stitches up, then I'll drop the green, and coming over to the next one. And for a couple stitches, we can pull this one up and just go over it, like even for 1 or 2 stitches, and that will make it, that'll catch it and go back, so the end won't be able to wiggle out later. And I'm going in between the spaces of the single crochet so I can catch that woven in tail. Oops. And there's one more stitch here. Make sure you go into the last stitch. There we go. And that's our last row we'll be doing. So cut your yarn, do a chain 1. You're going to weave in your tail. A little bit. And this orange one, just make sure that's not bulked up. Snip it off. And this one we're going to bring up, this green one we're going to bring up and go over it back a couple stitches and then cut it off. Same with this one. We'll go over it, bring it back and cut it off. This one, make sure it's not bulked up. I forgot to bring that one up on top of my work. So this one I'm just going to weave back in a little bit and cut it off. And then as you're doing your temperature blanket, you won't be drowning in ends. If you are drowning in ends, of course you're welcome to make put the tassels on. That's quite okay if you like the look. But remember how long your blanket's going to be. I think that's more of a concern than your ends. So these ones go back on underneath our next row, snip them off, and you're doing a temperature blanket with no ends to weave in. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, share with your friends, and Happy New Year! Stay hooked!